Hey there guys, and welcome to another episode of Scene to Screen, the awesome podcast that discusses movies, TV shows, and pretty much all aspects of pop culture. I'm Kieran, and back with me today is my good mate AJ.
How's it going, everyone?
And before I start getting into this episode and all that kind of stuff, I just want to take a sec to apologise. I've got a cold from someone out there, so that's why I sound all funky and disgusting. But that's enough about that. How are you doing, man? And what have you been up to?
Yeah, well, I've been good. I've been trying to get through some more of my immense DVD collection. I've got a problem where I just keep buying more DVDs. So I've said, right, now it's time to get through some. I watched recently, in 2 days, I watched Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi and Vincent Paronnaud, which was really, really good, based on a great graphic novel, a comic book. Attenberg by Athena Sangari, which is a Greek movie similar to the work of Yorgos Lanthimos. Clear from 5 to 7 by Agnes Varda, brilliant French New Wave film, which I already loved, but I bought it on DVD, so it's like I should really watch it. And The Love Witch by Anna Biller, which turned out to be really, really good. Great sort of pastiche of Hammer horror films and stuff like that, but with a really good sort of analytical eye on modern representations of gender and sex and stuff. And I saw Isle of Dogs as well, which that review will either be out soon or possibly may or be out already, depending on when this one is. What about you, man? What have you been watching?
Yeah, I'm good. I just started watching The Expanse on Netflix, sci-fi TV show. I wasn't really sure what to expect from it at first, but it's one of those shows it's so addictive and binge-worthy. And I'd say it's probably up there with Westworld as like one of my favourite sci-fi shows at the minute. So that really surprised me. And if anyone out there is looking for like a really cool kind of sci-fi show, I'd really recommend it because I didn't expect much from it, but I really liked it. Other than that, I've seen a few films since we last talked. I saw Ready Player One, and I was really lucky and I got an early screening for that, and that was really cool, and the film was awesome. My review is up already, and then I saw Blockers last week, which is the new comedy with John Cena. That film really surprised me. Again, my review is available, but I was surprised. It's one of the funniest films that I've seen in a very, very long time. Probably one of the funniest kind of studio films that I've seen since The Nice Guys, which I think was 2016. So yeah, both of those reviews are available now, and I guess I should probably move on and introduce the episode. And I'm really excited about this one because I think we've got a really cool episode lined up for this week, as both me and AJ will be discussing our 5 favourite movie heroes. These can be from any genre, and I don't know what AJ is going to say, AJ doesn't know what I'm going to say, but I've got a good idea that we won't kind of cross over in any way. We've got really different tastes. So yeah, let's just get straight into it, starting with your number 5. What's your 5th favourite movie hero?
So yeah, my first pick is Clint Eastwood's iconic Man with No Name, also referred to as Blondie in The Good, Bad and the Ugly. He appears in the Dollars trilogy by Sergio Leone, wonderful spaghetti westerns. In the first film, A Fistful of Dollars, Blondie's like a western take on the unnamed wandering Ronin from Kurosawa's Yojimbo, another one of my favourite films. He's a very hard-to-read hero who does good without any real need of recognition for his actions. He fulfills a more classic archetypal hero, I think, anyway, in for a few dollars more, but his stoic silence only increased in that film, and by The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, Blondie is almost giving nothing away, leaving his motivations in the minds and assumptions of the audience. Eastwood pretty much made his career with this role, and it's not hard to see why. He commands every scene without much dialogue, and without even being particularly physically imposing. His mysteries are mysteries to both the audience and those he allies with and fights against. Fistful of Dollars is a masterful remake in every way, and Eastwood's performance and the way that he builds upon Mifune's original character without emulating his acting style is what really cements its status as a classic. Take the original The Magnificent Seven as an example. Whilst it is a good film in its own right, the actor who portrays the equivalent of Mifune's character in that film, in the original Seven Samurai, plays it kind of with too much classic Western scene chewing, lessening the impact of the character, in my opinion. Eastwood instead uses the original character to create a new kind of Western hero, crossing John Wayne's reluctant hero archetype with the idea of a wandering Ronin in a wonderful minimalistic style. For all of his obfuscations, Blondie is a good man, and he does good to bring balance to an evil world. He's not sort of, a cowboys versus Indians type cowboy. He's a wandering gun who is just seeking to sort of take some of the darkness out of the Wild West. He's what the world has always needed. He's a hero who rights wrongs because that is what should be done, not just for personal reward or fame. And that, and the fact I think he's just the best Western hero that we've had yet, is what easily earns him this spot on my list.
Yeah, it's a great pick, especially hearing everything that you had to say. I think in terms of a Western hero, he kind of shaped all the heroes that kind of came after. There are a lot of, even in the Westerns we see today, which aren't nearly as many as what we used to see, you can kind of see that character in a lot of the different Western heroes, which I think is always really cool. So yeah, just a really great pick for your number 5, and I'll jump straight into my number 5, and I found this one really difficult. I had all of my other 4 chosen. They were all ready to go, but I was kind of struggling to choose between 3 characters for this one. I had the Iron Giant, Han Solo, and then the guy that I've got here, but eventually I landed on my favourite Hobbit, which is Samwise Gamgee, because even though Frodo is like the main protagonist of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it was really Samwise that pushed Frodo forward, and without Sam, Frodo would have absolutely no chance of even getting to Mordor, never mind having the actual willpower to throw the ring into the fire when he gets there. And then what I love about Sam, probably the most, my favourite thing about him, is that he didn't ask for this mission. He wasn't like Frodo, he didn't want to leave the Shire, but he stuck by his friend, and over the course of those 3 movies, he went from being the guy who was afraid to leave his home and was afraid to step outside and take that final step out of the Shire, and he grew into this hero who literally carried Frodo up the mountain, and he's the one that saved Middle-earth in the end, and he's just a really kind of kind and loving guy that is not there just to save the world, he's not there just to do all this stuff, he's not getting anything out of it, he's just there to help his friend, and I think that's just a really cool kind of hero that we don't often see anymore. So yeah, my number 5 pick is Samwise Gamgee from the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
It's a great choice. He is my favourite Lord of the Rings character, I'd say. Just love Sean Astin in that role. He's just so funny, he's so sort of natural, and he's just an all-round great guy. And like you say, he is really the hero of it. He is the one who carries Frodo to his destiny. Without him, things would have gone very, very badly. So yeah, I'm glad that you chose him to represent the heroes of the Lord of the Rings films, because he really deserves it. I'll go straight into my number 4 pick, which is Driver, from Nicholas Winding Refn's 2011 film Drive. Driver is another character rooted in earlier cinema, finding his earliest roots in Jean-Pierre Melville's Le Samouraï. He's a classic neo-noir hero, silent, deadly, and stuck in a situation he had no desire to find himself in. To me, this is still Ryan Gosling's best performance to date. He plays everything in such an understated way, and when he does finally explode, it makes it all the more scary. Driver does what he does well to a perfectionist degree, and even though he might not always know the best thing to say in conversation, that doesn't mean that he should be underestimated. It's magnificent watching his social interactions with his neighbour Irene, and how this spark of human interest pulls him further and further into the darkest side of crime. Driver is a criminal by profession, but it's always been crime that he's undertaken on his own terms. Now he has to learn to adapt on the run, and the way that he reacts to this pulls him deep into anti-hero territory. Driver is kind of the perfect anti-hero to me. Even though his methods are brutal and unrelenting, you completely understand why he's reacting that way. He's protecting the one thing in his life that isn't him that he cares about. And to be honest, he doesn't even really care that much about himself. It's like he's finally found something that he can live, and if he needs to, die for. He's showing compassion the only way he knows how to, going to extreme lengths to provide safety for someone he cares about. Having read the book, I know more details about the original character and why he is the way he is, but I actually prefer the way that Refn leaves pretty much all of that out, leaving us with a character whose motivations are able to be read only through his actions, and by God do his actions speak volumes. It's just such a perfect combo of subtle and nuanced writing and acting, and that combo lands Driver comfortably at my number 4 spot.
Again, it's a really good pick. I think I didn't see Drive until I think last year or maybe the year before, but Driver's just a character I agree, it's still Ryan Gosling's best role, and I think exactly what you said. I've not read the book, but I think the perfect thing about him is that you don't know everything about him, you don't know everything he's thinking, and the fact that you don't know much about him, it just heightens that character and just makes him all the more interesting. And then all the sequences where he's kind of you do see him flip out and he kind of loses it a little bit. The elevator scene especially and stuff like that. It's just, he's one of the better kind of anti-heroes, I think, in any kind of action film that I've seen recently. And yeah, I think Ryan Gosling really kind of cemented himself as kind of the action hero that doesn't talk much in that film, and we've not really seen him do any more films like that since, but it would be cool for him to kind of go back to that. But yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a great pick for your number 4. Alright, so now I'll get into my number 4, and I've got Harry Potter, obviously from the Harry Potter franchise. Anyone that knows me will know that I'm a fan not only of the Harry Potter films, but of the books as well. So when AJ told me that he wanted to do this episode, this kind of hero-centered episode, Harry Potter was one of the first names that jumped into my head. I get that it's not really a unique or surprising choice, but as a kid that was around 6 or 7 when the first Harry Potter film came out, I grew up with Harry and Ron and Hermione, with a new film coming out every Christmas, and I fell in love with that world. There are so many reasons why I love Harry Potter as a hero, so it's quite difficult to just choose one, but I think more than anything else, it's his ridiculous kind of bravery and selflessness that makes him a great hero. Harry isn't the most powerful wizard in that world. He's going up against a bad guy that's 10 times stronger, but he's probably the bravest wizard, because he's the one that walks into the forest in the Deathly Hallows. He knows that he's probably gonna die, but he still walks straight up to Voldemort because he knows that it's the only way that he's gonna save his friends and save the school. I could literally talk for hours about why Harry Potter is one of the greatest cinematic heroes, but don't worry, I'll leave it there. So yeah, Harry Potter is at my number 4.
Yeah, I can't really fault that, to be honest. You explained well why Harry is a good character. I think in the first few films, if we're just talking about the films here, because I'm a huge fan of the books as well, and obviously the books are better just because of the depth, but the films do give that really good sense of who Harry is, particularly in the later ones, because he's very easy to underestimate in the first few, because he's just kind of some kid who's just in the situation, and he doesn't really stand out too much at first, other than being the chosen one. But like you say, as it goes on, just his bravery really comes out, and you actually see, well, this is why he's been picked, because he will, if this is what he has to do, he will walk and he will face his death if that's what he has to do. Yeah, I really like Harry. I think he's unfairly sort of dissed a little bit, in my opinion. Yeah, so I'll go to my number 3. My number 3 pick is Han Solo. I had to pick a classic Star Wars character, and Han Solo is always going to be my first pick from those. He's a great example of the hard-hearted anti-hero who does the right thing in the end. Unable to escape his desire to do good, he allows himself to be won over by his new friends, and he returns at that crucial moment to save their skins. Han Solo's defining character moment is one of my favourites in cinema history. He fries Greedo without a second thought and without remorse, and it may seem reckless at first, shooting someone to death in the middle of a crowded bar, but Solo knows the world he lives in. He knows it's either him or Greedo in that situation, and he always looks out for number 1. His character development as the series goes on is only slight, but it works for the story being told. He never oversteps his boundaries and generally plays second gun to Luke, but he does it so well and with such a sense of fun that his scenes are almost always the most enjoyable moments in the movies. His final appearance in The Force Awakens is heartbreaking and powerful, seeing the once young rogue forced back into a life of smuggling with the weight of his past on his back. His exit from the series was not unexpected, but it was still hard to take nonetheless, and some people have kind of taken some shots at Harrison Ford's acting, but I think he actually gave old Han Solo, that actual kind of sense of weight that he needed. He's tired, and he's no longer the man he once was, and he's lived through heartbreak and suffering by this point, and I just thought it was such a poignant end to his character. He's still trying to do the right thing, even in his last moments. Harrison Ford delivers his performance as Solo with such roguish charm that it's impossible to hate him, even when he seems that he's giving up on his new allies. And his delivery of Solo's trademark quips resulted in countless quotable lines that, even out of context, work perfectly in almost any situation. He's an all-round awesome swashbuckling bastard. We love him, and he knows it. What's your next pick, Kieran?
Well, I just want to talk for a second talking about Han Solo because, like I said, he was nearly one of my picks, so I'm really glad that you picked him because it gives me a chance to talk a little bit about him. I won't talk too much because I think you touched on pretty much every reason as to why he's a great hero. You know, he's kind of that guy that you don't really want to mess with. He's not the altruistic hero that's always going to do the right thing. He lives in the grey area between where you've got Luke, who's always trying to be good, and then you've got Darth Vader, who's downright evil, and then you've kind of got Han, who is slightly more to the good, but he's willing to do kind of the wrong things to eventually do the right thing, and that's what always kind of made me fall in love with that character. He's just, like you said, he's such a swashbuckling kind of fun, badass hero, and it's just, he is one of the better cinematic heroes ever. And then, like you said, I do see quite a lot of people giving Harrison Ford a little bit of hate for kind of phoning in The Force Awakens, but and I can kind of see where they come from in some scenes, but then for me, he just wins it all back in that final moment with Kylo Ren. I think that's one of the better Star Wars scenes, if not one of my favourite Star Wars scenes, with Harrison Ford, Han Solo, just kind of touching his son's face, and it kind of shows you everything that character's been through, but in the end, he's still the same character. So yeah, just another great pick on your list. And moving on to my number 3, I've got another character that I grew up watching as a kid, Wolverine, and like Han Solo, Wolverine is more of an anti-hero, and when coming up with this list, I just couldn't not include Wolverine because there's something about that character that stands out to me as being kind of one of the most relatable and sympathetic heroes of all time in cinema. When we meet him in the first X-Men movie, he was kind of a dick, and he didn't really want to get involved with Professor X and the X-Men, but underneath all that kind of dickiness, he was a real guy that cared about Rogue, and that moment at the end of that first X-Men movie with Rogue, I think it's still one of the most kind of heroic moments in cinema overall, and definitely within the superhero genre. To pick out a reason why Wolverine is one of my favourite heroes is really difficult, just because Hugh Jackman does such a great job of playing that character, and there are so many great reasons to choose from. For me though, I think it's the fact that this is a guy who's been alive for hundreds of years. He's done some bad shit, he's done some good shit, he's seen his friends die, he's been experimented on, he's really kind of lived a terrible life, but after hundreds of years, he's still a hero. In Logan, which I think is easily the best X-Men and Wolverine film, he's still there fighting for those kids and doing everything he can to get them across the border. Not many people on either of our lists, so far anyway, could take that amount of crap and still come out being a hero. So yeah, Wolverine is definitely at my number 3.
Yeah, again, I can't argue with Wolverine on your list at all. I mean, I know you're a huge Wolverine fan generally, but I mean, I think anyone can agree with him. He's one of the darkest anti-heroes that Marvel has, but he's not so dark that he's not the Punisher, where he is actually a sort of a complete savage that he does right in the end. Like, Wolverine is dark, but he's never letting his mind stray from the light. He knows what is right and what is wrong. I do still need to see Logan. It really sucks that I haven't made my way around to that, but that's just laziness on my part. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they take his character even further to its logical conclusion. It does seem to be the film where this is what everything that all of Hugh Jackman's performances as Logan have been building up to this point. So yeah, I'm gonna get that watch soon, I swear. So I'll move to my number 2 pick, slightly offbeat. I'm going for Lionel Cosgrove. He is the hero of Peter Jackson's early splatter comedy horror film Braindead, which I think 1990, 1991. It was his third film, still very kind of rough around the edges, but I just absolutely love it. It's my favourite zombie film along with 28 Days Later, and it's just such a sort of romp that you can't quite believe what you're seeing on screen, but you know that you're having a great time. Anyway, so moving on to Lionel. He's kind of like Norman Bates, but if Bates didn't completely go off the deep end. He's a practically enslaved mummy's boy who lives for his mother's whims, and Timothy Balm plays Lionel with such a charming sappiness that you root for him while simultaneously wishing he could just pull his socks up and get his life sorted. He's a man with no idea of how to balance different elements of his life. He's kind of a child who never really grew up. The film charts his development from this sort of sappy, confused young man to zombie killer extraordinaire with such a weird realness that although what you're seeing on screen is ridiculous, you can't help but be invested in Lionel and his struggles. His budding romance with Paquita, a grocer's daughter who's convinced that Lionel is her destined love, is one of the highlights of the film, and watching Lionel trying to balance his fondness for Paquita and his dedication to his mother results in some of the best and funniest scenes in the movie, especially sequences where he's desperately trying to hide his mother's burgeoning zombiehood from Paquita and other family guests. This balancing act seems ridiculous at first, but the film's messages about personal freedom and development shine through due to the impeccable performances and great character development and writing. By the end of the film, the Lionel that we see wielding a lawnmower as a weapon splattered with zombie remnants certainly is the same Lionel we were introduced to at the start, but by now he's made the progression finally to adulthood, he's freed himself from the shackles of his draconian mother, and he's allowed himself to truly be born again, as it were. It's a classic arc, but written, performed and presented with such gruesome glee and genuine empathy for the character that I have to give Lionel a high place on my list. Bravo, Peter Jackson.
So this is a film that I've not seen. I don't know how I've not seen it. I'm a big fan of Peter Jackson. I love zombie films, so it's just kind of weird that I've not seen it, but I'm definitely going to go back and watch it now. So I can't really speak much about the hero himself. So I'll just move on to my number 2, and I've got Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones for me is the kind of ultimate human hero. I've said this loads of times, but I knew Indy before I knew Han Solo, so that might be the reason why I like one more than the other. But Indiana Jones has always been one of my all-time favourite action heroes, and mainly because he's so cool, you know. He goes on all these insane adventures, he kicks ass, he fights Nazis, and I always really like the idea that he's a professor as well. He should be this kind of really boring, nerdy guy, but he's more like James Bond. He gets the girls, he has a cool outfit, cool weapons, and he never takes shit from anyone, and that's probably one of my favourite things about him. When I think about Indy and why he's such a great hero, I go straight to the scene in Raiders when that guy has that giant freaking sword and he's waving it around acting all tough, and instead of picking up a sword and fighting this guy in the kind of heroic and honourable way, Indy just picks up his gun and shoots him. Like this hero doesn't take any shit, and that one scene tells you everything you need to know about Indiana Jones. And fun fact, I heard that the only reason that scene ended up happening that way is because Harrison Ford had diarrhea on the set of Raiders and they didn't have time to do a big kind of sword fight. So yeah, Indiana Jones is at my number 2.
Yeah, Harrison Ford, he's just so good at just unexpectedly shooting people in the middle of a scene. It's funny that that's like a defining character moment for both him and Han Solo, yet both of those scenes are individually just so brilliant. Like, it gets the idea of the character across just so well. Like, I do love that bit in Indiana Jones. I think you are right about that anecdote as well. Like, he's just like, nope, we can't do this. I feel really, really sick. Why don't we just shoot him instead? And obviously, you know, you've got all of his amazing stunts and stuff that happen throughout the original 3 films. Yeah, he is kind of an ultimate action hero. So yeah, definitely can't fault you there. So I will go to my number 1 pick. I'd just like to give a shout out to my boy Batman. He's not on this list, but he is brilliant, obviously. There've been many great actors to perform him so far, but he just didn't quite get on this list. If we were talking like heroes overall, and I drew from all the books and comic books and stuff that I've read, Batman would definitely be on there. But if we're just sticking with films, my number 1 pick has got to be Ellen Ripley from Alien and Aliens. Ripley has to take my top spot, just due to how perfectly she embodies the struggle of the hero who goes from a nobody to a saviour out of pure necessity of survival, finding herself and a true meaning to life along the way. Alien and Aliens is one of my favourite pairs of films of all time, and the way that Aliens builds on the world and themes of the first film is perfectly exemplified by Ripley's character arc. Sigourney Weaver nails Ripley's progression through both films. In the first film, it's her survival that she's concerned with, as it is all that she can do, and she has to get out of that situation, do everything she can, but she still has time to make sure that Jonesy the cat is safe. So she has got that sort of caring side as well. But then in the second one, she actually faces her fears by going back, and in doing so, she becomes a protector of another's survival, namely Newt, the young orphan colonist girl that they find. Every decision that Ripley makes comes with such determined delivery of these lines and complex facial expressions. You can literally see Ripley developing as a person as the films go on. The daughter subplot that is properly fleshed out in the director's cut of Aliens, I think, is key to her character. She's a survivor who had something dear taken from her by an unstoppable force, so she has to become an unstoppable force herself to find closure and move on with her life. There are so many different ways that her arc could be taken from a metaphorical point of view, and I think that's a sign of a good character, one where you can take elements of their struggle and apply it to many different situations, both personal and social. Plus, she's just a kick-ass action hero at the end of Aliens. The scene where she tools up and sets off to rescue Newt is such a satisfying culmination of everything that has come before, and it plays as an echo to the conclusion of the first film. Only this time, Ripley isn't trying to escape from those dark, threatening corridors. No, she's actually moving deeper and deeper into them, armed and ready to take on anything that might come for her in her effort to save the person who has come to mean so much to her, kind of as a surrogate daughter. It's that kind of growth of character that I like to see in my central characters, and nobody does it better than Weaver's Ellen Ripley, and that is why I have her at my number one spot.
It's another pick that I'm not really going to fall, even though I've seen Aliens, but I've not seen Alien yet, just not had the chance to get around to it. I think I was with you when I first watched Aliens in one of our lectures, but I've not had a chance to go back and watch Alien yet, but just from the one that I've seen, I understand completely why Ripley would be someone's first pick for a favourite hero. She's badass, she's strong, she's powerful, and there's none of this kind of bullshit where it's like she's any less heroic because she's a female. It's just she's a hero just like any of the rest of the heroes in any of these, and I think it was kind of a big push for a female kind of hero at a time where there weren't many. And then just what you were saying about the whole mother storyline and all that kind of stuff, it added layers to that character, and I think that performance by Sigourney Weaver is one of the best in kind of not just blockbusters but films in general. So yeah, it's another great pick, and I'll just move on to my number one. And at my number one spot, I've got my boy Superman. There are probably a lot of people out there right now that are kind of rolling their eyes because I know Superman isn't exactly the coolest guy to like, but he's the ultimate superhero. Without Superman, you wouldn't have Batman or Wolverine or Spider-Man or any modern superheroes or superhero movies because he was the first. And for me, Superman was the first hero that I ever saw. He was my kind of introduction into pop culture, and he's always been my favourite hero. I remember watching the animated shows and obviously the Donna film with Christopher Reeves. I grew up watching Smallville, all 10 seasons. I watched them as they were coming on. And then now we have Henry Cavill, who I absolutely love as Superman. I just don't think he's been given the best opportunity to portray that character to its fullest potential. When I was coming up with all the reasons why I love all of these heroes, I found Superman quite easy because the reason I love Superman so much is because he has all of these powers. He's super strong, he's super fast, he can fly, he can shoot lasers out of his eyes, all of that stuff. And he could use all of those powers to rule the world, but he doesn't. I always loved the fact that Superman is the most powerful superhero in the world, and he's technically the least human superhero, but at the same time, he's the most human superhero we've got because he maintains and lives by all of the ideals that humanity taught him. There's that great line from Batman about Superman being the most human superhero, but also the most godlike. I think he says something like, "Thank God that doesn't occur to him," which I always thought was an incredible kind of view, and it perfectly sums up why I love that character. So yeah, Superman is my favourite superhero of all time.
Yeah, I think Superman's a character I've been more and more interested in over time. Like, I used to kind of have that kind of cliche thought where it's like, oh, well, he can just do everything, can't he? So he's not there. Like, who cares? But, like, everything you're saying there makes so much sense. Like, he is just this almost godlike being, but he doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't occur to him to use his powers for evil because he is an inherently good man. And he just ends up being so much more human than all of the other actual humans around him. He is a really, really well-developed character. I'm looking forward to seeing what they might do with him in future films. Hopefully he gets his own like standalone sequel at some point. I think they're definitely going to do that. Yeah, so he's just a character I've come to appreciate more as I've kind of thought on his like abilities and his mindset and stuff. So I can completely see why you'd put him as a number one spot. He is pretty much the ultimate superhero.
Alright, I guess that wraps up our Top 5 Heroes episode. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Scene to Screen podcast, and if you liked this episode, make sure you check back next week for our Top 5 Villains of all time, which I think might even be more interesting than this episode. You can listen to the Scene to Screen podcast on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, so make sure you check us out on all of those and subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode, but until then, let us know what your Top 5 Heroes of all time are in the comment section below.
Yeah, hit us up, guys. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, have a good one, and we'll see you in the next episode.